Recently we bought and reviewed the Mac Mini with the M4 Pro chip, which has 512 GB of internal storage. It's quite fast but definitely not sufficient for the kind of workflows it can handle. We also bought and reviewed the RayQ hub for the Mac Mini, which adds multiple old school ports along with an NVMe M.2 slot for extending storage. However, it can only go up to 10 Gbps, which is kind of slow, and it has some other issues as well, which is why I'm not willing to use my SSD in that hub. You can watch that video and the links will be available in the description and the I button as well. Now, to overcome the storage issues, we have gone with this Graugear SSD Enclosure, which is a Thunderbolt 4 enclosure and can go up to 40 Gbps. It has a very interesting design with a copper heatsink and a cooling fan. We will check out its design, installation, speed test and pros and cons to help you decide if it's worth buying. So without wasting any further time, let's get started. The box is very simple and there is nothing fancy about it. Inside the box you get the enclosure, one Type-C to Type-C cable which is Thunderbolt 4 capable, a thermal pad for heat management and a screwdriver, which is a very good thing since the enclosure doesn't use conventional screws. And apart from that, there is some documentation, warranty card and some screw as well. Now let's talk about the design and the build quality. This has a metal body made of aluminium and it's very heavy too. The build quality seems to be very solid and feels premium. From a distance it looks like plastic, probably because of its black color, but it's not plastic. These are the copper pipes or rails that go up to the cooling fan, and here is the Type-C port and this is the LED indicator. The weight of this enclosure without SSD installed is around 160 grams. We will now open the enclosure and we'll see how does it looks like from the inside. So these two screws on the either side of the enclosures are given. From the inside it looks something like this. This is the SSD slot, which is compatible with M.2 NVMe SSD in M key specification and 2280 size. And here there are these two connectors for powering on the fan. Apart from this, these are two copper pipes or rails. So when you install the SSD, this copper sink or rails or pipe that sits onto the SSD, which helps in cooling it. Now let's install the SSD. We are good to go now and the SSD is ready to use. Now let's talk about the connectivity and compatibility. This enclosure supports USB 4.0 and Thunderbolt 4 for maximum speed. It's backward compatible with USB 3.2 and USB 3.0, so it works with the older devices as well. The fan is placed against the NAND chips of the SSD, which is effective in lowering the temperature. Let's test the real world performance now. So I have installed the XPG S70 Blade M.2 2DB SSD, which is rated for 7400 Mbps read and 6800 Mbps write speed. Let's check the benchmark and data transfer speed. We will test this enclosure one more time with the Crucial P3 plus 2TB SSD, which is rated for 5000 Mbps read and 4200 Mbps write speeds. Now if you compare these results with the benchmark result of Mac Mini M4 Pro's internal SSD, this enclosure does a great job. Both the XPG S70 and Crucial P3 Plus are Gen 4 SSDs, and the performance with this enclosure is superb. As you can see, the results are impressive. If you work with video editing, 4K 8K rendering or large file transfer, this enclosure can be a perfect external SSD solution. Now we will look into the thermal performance. A common problem with the external SSD enclosures is overheating, and here's where the unique feature of this enclosure comes into play. It has dual copper heat pipes and an active cooling fan. These copper pipes sit on top of the thermal pad, transferring the heat from the SSD to thermal pad and then from the pad to the copper sink or pipe. The fan blows away the hot air, which is actually very effective. There are many enclosures available in the market with cooling fans, but in almost all of those, either the fan is installed on the back side of the SSD or on the circuit board of the enclosure, which makes them less effective or kind of a gimmicky. We had tested one USB 3.2 SSD enclosure which had a cooling fan installed on the circuit board, and it was almost ineffective. I'll put the link to that video in the description. Even after the speed test, the SSD remains within a safe temperature range, showing the cooling system is effective. This is the temperature graph of the SSD while using it. Unless you can hear the paranormal sound, you really don't need to worry about the sound this fan makes. It is very negligible. However, it would have been better if there was an option to turn the fan off. Also, the fan starts working as soon as the enclosure is powered on and keeps working until you disconnect the enclosure. Temperature of the drive or enclosure or any other activity doesn't affect the working or speed of the fan. Now let's break down the pros and cons. So pros would be super fast 40 Gbps speed, Thunderbolt 4 support, active cooling fan plus copper heat sinks or pipe for heat management, and very premium aluminium build quality. And cons should be it is slightly expensive for the budget users, and there is no button to deactivate the cooling fan. And the third would be the circular fan cover or whatever you want to call this. This enclosure has a fantastic build quality, but this part looks odd. It's shiny and looks cheap, or maybe it's just me who feels that way. One thing that bothers me about this enclosure is that my XPG S70 Blade SSD doesn't fit properly, and I have to use a bit of force to install it. However, my Crucial P3 Plus fits nicely. This might be because the XPG SSD has DRAM and chips or controllers on both the sides, causing it to make contact with this part of the enclosure, resulting in a tight fit. And one last thing I would like to mention that when I set up this enclosure initially, it started heating up like a gas stove, but the overheating issue was completely resolved after updating the firmware of this enclosure. I'll drop a link of that firmware into the description of this video just in case if you need that. Overall, this is one of the best high performance SSD enclosures if you need maximum speed and reliability. So is it worth it? If you need a high-speed external SSD for gaming, video editing or heavy data transfer, this is a solid choice. If you are interested, check out the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, and if you are new here, please subscribe for more awesome tech unboxings and review. See you in the next video. Until then, happy teching.